Hi, this is Marlene, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Whether you're watching a video or listening to a podcast, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. Links to videos or MP3 files can be found on miamighostchronicles.com. Go to marlenepardo.com for information on new book releases. I narrate several podcast series that can be found on major podcast platforms and can also be listened to via Alexa, Sonos, and other home systems. Look for Supernatural Storytime for scary storytelling, Nightshade Diary for classic horror and adventure stories, Stories of the Supernatural for interviews with different guests on the show. If you want to get noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit Strange Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com or find us on Blogspot. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How's everybody doing? Good, I hope. I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Everything is good here on the farm, on the new homestead. And I'm not even gonna attempt to give an excuse about why I don't have a chicken film for the video portion of this episode. I'm just gonna just ignore that whole thing. But let's get to the good news. And as far as I'm concerned, what the good news is about, it has to do with who the guest is. And I know some of you have been asking so much about information, interviews with people that are familiar with Bigfoot, Sasquatch, however you want to call them. And abracadabra, here we are. The guest tonight is Mr. Ron Morehead. And let me tell you about him. He's an adventurist, a positive someone. I love that. Who loves life, but often lives it on the edge. As a scuba diver, he swam with the hammerhead sharks. He's been filmed in Mexico's Pacific Ocean, riding in the back of giant manta rays. And he's been a safety diver for the filming of right whales at Patagonia. As a private pilot, he's flown his own aircraft from the Alaskan bush to the Costa Rican jungle. Besides traveling to the ancient Mayan civilizations in the Yucatan, he's also flown into a remote jungle area of Chiapas, which is southern Mexico, on an anonymous Mayan discovery expedition. What he saw was thought to be one of the last remaining strongholds of the Mayan people. He's also ventured into western Nepal's Suklafanta Wildlife Reserve. I don't know if I killed that name, but to help assess the tiger population, explored the jungles of Bardia on elephants, and been in the wilderness of Siberia, looking for evidence of the Russian jetty. We're going to talk about that, yes. He has made 2 trips in South America exploring the enigmatic structures and the non-human remains of the pre-Inca people. Over the years, Ron has been interviewed by several radio programs, and he's been televised by the BBC and other learning channels. He was a guest speaker at the Darwin Museum in Moscow, Russia, and for years he's given presentations at symposiums and conferences about his Bigfoot Sasquatch experiences. He has shared his accounts, and he has a book, Voices in the Wilderness, that chronicles his 40 years of researching this enigma. Besides the book, he's produced 2 CDs with actual Bigfoot vocalizations, focusing on the interaction he and others had with these forest giants. And I want to welcome him. And it's like, I don't even know what to ask him to get going on this. How are you doing today?
Doing well.
I'm telling you, I am. Wow. You have done it. You must, I mean, everything is like, how many, they could do various Discovery Channel programs on your adventures.
I don't count them anymore. I've been doing this for 50 years now, so.
I can imagine. Let me ask you, and it sounds like you've been all over the world in different locations, remote locations, but let's look at this particular thing, which is the Bigfoot Sasquatch.
Sure.
I don't know what happened. How did you get interested in this? Was it something that you happened upon in one of your travels, or something somebody told you? How did that come about?
No, actually, I was friends with a group of hunters, but I wasn't a hunter, and they had encountered something in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, which about 8 miles into the wilderness from the closest place you could drive to, and it's about 8,400 feet in elevation. So they had gone hunting. A couple of brothers, Johnson brothers, had gone up there that summer earlier to just assess the camp, see how it's like, because it's pretty remote and pretty imposing to get to. But they had these things come in, and at first they thought it might have been a bear, but then they realized the sounds didn't represent a bear, and they're avid hunters. They've been going there since 1958. Actually, this started in 1971.
Okay.
And they came out with a story about these things. So they went out there after the commotion had stopped, and they found this big track out there by the stove, which had been packed in by mules and reassembled in the mud. And they came out and told the rest of the hunters, which were all of them were my friends, but again, I wasn't a hunter at that time. And one of the guys, they all went back up there, let's put it that way, just to see what was going on. And one of the guys heard it, and first he didn't know what word to put it. Very religious guy. He was very thrown aback with it because it just it scared him off. As soon as daylight came, he left a note and told the others he's out of there. So he didn't go back and wouldn't go back. He came out, told the women that what the Johnson brothers told him earlier was true. There is some kind of monster up there that's messing around with them. And anyway, the men didn't come out when they were supposed to. So he didn't want to go back by himself. I was friends with them, and the wives were all worried because they didn't know what to expect. They just knew they could be eaten, they could be whatever. They don't know. It's just a monster. And so anyway, I was asked to go back with him, and I was glad to do that because again, they were my friends, and I wanted to know what was going on too. So we made the trek in there, which was very hard for me. He almost killed me getting in there. It's really a tough trip. I thought I was in shape then too, but got in. The guys were okay. They just spent an extra day because of all the commotion going on with these big giants, whatever they were. And they came out, and I got involved in the group that way, and I started wanting to go back. So none of them were looking for Bigfoot. It was just a hunting camp, and all heavily armed. So really, that's how I got involved. And from
when you went there, did you actually hear or see anything, or were they so trustworthy that you're like, if they're saying that they heard something?
Oh, yeah, they showed me a track and showed me some, because they'd taken some recorders back with them. They showed me some the tracks and some sounds that they'd recorded. And I know they're all trustworthy guys. They're very outstanding businessmen, really, and very uppity guys. And so I believed them. And anyway, I got involved in the group, started going up there a lot that same year in 1971. Started encountering these things myself with a couple of the other guys when any of them could go.
Right.
And we all started recording them. And it was 1971, 72, the winter, when the snow ran us out. We couldn't go back anymore. That Warren Johnson, he's kind of the leader of the group. He wrote a 23-page letter to Ivan Sanderson, who thought it was probably a hoax because nothing like this happens to people, right?
Right.
And so he sent it to a guy named Peter Byrne out in Oregon, who thought the same thing. Somebody's pulling somebody's leg, but just because he thought he'd go ahead and send it to Alan Berry, who was in California, very close to where we were. He's in Redding, actually working for a newspaper at the time. He came down and interviewed us and was convinced that maybe we thought there was something going on, whether it really was or not. Now, he went up there thinking it was a hoax too, so he was an investigative reporter. So we invited him up in 1972. He went up and he started recording them also. And he's the one who fostered the studies that we had done on these things, showing that they were not hoaxed, that they were credible, that they had not been manipulated, they had not been slowed down, they had not been speeded up, they had not been manufactured. There was no 60-cycle hum in them. A year-long study at the University of Wyoming by Professor Curlin, an electrical engineer, a professor of electrical engineering there. And that was a big step, but it wasn't quite enough for academia to swallow the whole thing yet. Just because, however, Dr. Curlin's credentials are impeccable. He gave a presentation on this up at Vancouver, BC in 1978, I think it was. And it's called Anthropology of the Unknown. And his whole paper was put out in a book that was published by the UCB Press in 1980. And so anybody can read the full article there, but he showed the graph to where they were inside, outside, above, and below the average human range of humans. So that was a big significant step, really, but again, it wasn't enough. So we just kind of sit on it. We had, people making fun of it a lot, so because they still thought it had to be hoax. Nothing like this happens,
Right.
where these things are actually messing with a group like it were us. And again, we had high-powered guns with us. We weren't taking a chance like that. The sounds, when you play them, they're very aggressive sounding to start with in 71, 72, and then later on in 74, they were still coming around, and there's a family of them. I say
I was
they
going to
because,
ask you,
yeah,
was it more than one?
yes, yeah, it's a family of them. And we find different size tracks, and we hear different types of voices, and you hear the voices interacting with each other, stepping on each other. So at the time, you don't know if they're asking for the salt and pepper, or who's going to eat us first, or what. You don't know.
Right.
You just kind of sitting there wondering if you're going to have to choose your way out, or if they're going to come in and get you. But again, the one guy wouldn't go back up, and he didn't. And to this day, I don't think he goes back up and spends the night.
Some people just, I'm sure it just
It's
doesn't fit
kind
in
of creepy,
their reality. It's like, nah.
but they didn't attack us. They seemed to keep coming around, taking the food we leave out, and we were underestimating what we were dealing with. We thought they were just an ape out in the woods that hadn't been discovered, and a lot of people still think that, and that's what most researchers look for, is the ape in the woods. But we were having other unusual phenomena happen up there too, all these years, because this went on all the way through 76. Things still go on up there. As early as 2016, when I was up there, we had some things going on. But the close-in stuff, the stuff that we recorded and had analyzed by the University of Wyoming, stopped in 1976 when something happened up there that we kind of regret in a little way. But we had to shoot this bear in camp, and that's another story. It wasn't until 2008 till a cryptolinguist accidentally ran across these sounds. He heard them on the BFRO.org program, and he thought, well, I hear language in that. He's a cryptolinguist who's been trained by the military, two-time graduate of the Crypto-Linguistic School of Languages in Monterey, California, foreign languages. And he's been trained to decipher any fakery in languages, and if it is a language, and just what's creating these sounds. And he studied them. He came out and actually interviewed us. He was teaching foreign languages after his retirement from the Navy. He started teaching foreign languages at a college, and he came out and interviewed myself and one of the other guys to find out the context of some of these sounds and ask if he could study them himself. So he went back and studied them and actually transcribed a language within these sounds. And what makes that incredible is that it takes a human vocal mechanism to create the language.
Right.
When I say language, by the human definition of language, means a morphine stream of words which make a sapious sentence. And you got that. You got something only humans are supposed to be able to do. Yet this is outside the human range. And that really makes a puzzle to it. Al Berry also had a master's degree in science. He was the investigative reporter, like I say. He fostered the studies, and he said, whatever you do, don't talk about the strange things that goes on up here, the lights,
Well, I was gonna ask you what you said, strange things, and it's like stranger than this or as strange. What was going on there?
It's all kind of convoluted together. You might see orbs. I've seen a UFO once up there. I've seen what I would call a UFO, a big blue ball coming down from the sky, controlled. And just sounds that you couldn't find the source of, unusual sounds, not just vocalizations, but one time we heard a big tuning fork up above us in the daytime, and yet it sounded like a huge something, but you couldn't find the source of it. And you wonder, a lot of people ask me why you didn't get a picture if all this stuff went on. That's the big question, because we tried to get a picture, and these things seem to outfox us every time. We could set up camera traps and all that, and they'd go a different way into our camp for the food and all. So it was kind of a mystery. We took those things. One time we thought we had a herd of horses coming down to our camp, and there's no horses doing that, One time I thought I heard a car door slam outside this camp, and now we're 8 miles in the wilderness. There's no roads.
And you're thinking,
there.
how does
that happen? How does that happen? They're found out, I think, they were toying with us to see what our reaction would be. I don't really know what their thinking was because I didn't get to talk to them. I'll take that back. I did try to talk to them in 1974 when they came into camp and they started interacting with us while we're outside the shelter. Normally they wouldn't do any sounds, so we were inside the shelter because they're very elusive. And so I got to see one that night in 1974. was just a glimpse of one shooting down through the trees, and he had been making noises up behind me, and then it was a little one because it was a little voice down by the creek, and we think the mother was down there with that, and they were interacting with each other when this one gave the samurai cry, they call it, and that was coined by Matt Moneymaker, actually, from the BFRO. And he was streaked down through the trees, just real smooth, very, very fast, and interesting. It was a good night because really the word is, if you don't see what made the sound, you don't know what made the sound. But we know that there's no 60-cycle hum in these. They were not fake. They were not. We knew that, but you have to have the professionals behind it. So we got the professor of electrical engineering saying the tapes were not phonied up. They were not
doctored or anything.
In any way. You got the cryptolinguist trained by the military to be just that. And he said that humans can't make these sounds. And I've got some other people who are sound professionals who claim the same thing. They can't do it. Humans can't do it. Yet, according to Dr. Lieberman at Brown University, he stated that only humans have that vocal mechanism to create language. You know, apes don't have it. Dolphins don't have it. Even though everybody has a way of communicating, but with language, only humans are supposed to have that ability. These things have that ability. And we got that recorded. You know, we got their stuff going on. And for years, we recorded them. We got tons of that stuff. We released it, a couple of them in the CDs that I produced with the narrative. One of them was narrated by Jonathan Frakes, Star Trek, Next Generation.
Right.
It's about 40 minutes long, and it's got the sound integrated. Al Berry wrote that, and I produced it. And then a few years later, his encouragement, I produced one of my own with the sound of the interaction I had in 1974, the night I got to see one. So that's where it goes, and I've been working it. I travel the world. I haven't been to all the places. What the introduction gave me sounded pretty good, didn't it?
Well, let me ask you. It sounds like you've been consistently going back there through all these years.
Yeah, we have.
Are they still there, or they're not, or not as many?
I don't know. The anomalies are still there. Like 2016, I was up there. Now in 2011, I did have something going on with the chattering, and they were there then. So I can say as early as 2011, I know they were there. It was 2016 when I was up there with somebody else, and we was in this tent. We had taken the shelters, not livable anymore, kind of tore up. And I saw this light, about 3 or 4 foot long, going by our tent, just controlled. Like I call it a lightsaber, sort of like Star Trek. But we watched it for several seconds. I mean, it wasn't going fast. It was just moving slowly through the trees, and that was a little concerning because you don't know what it's all about. But it got me into what could cause all this. You know, what science is behind it, because Al Berry says stay with science. He said he was master's degree in science. He says don't talk about the crazy stuff that goes on, or you won't get invited to talk anywhere. And we started talking at different conventions and different places. He passed away in 2012, but he became a good friend of mine. We started doing quite a bit of this stuff. And but the travels I've done was mainly to I could afford it, number one, lucky me. And I was able to do those things that you mentioned, and I've had a good life, and it's been very exciting, and no regrets. Anyway,
have you had similar encounter? Because sometimes you hear like there's different, I want to say, versions of Bigfoot depending on different parts of the country or different parts of the world.
Yeah, there's different. I get into an alien component to these things because I think there is. 20% of sightings correlate with a possible UFO sighting.
Yes, exactly.
And that was, I thought, very interesting statistic that I got out of the Huffington Post in 2012 when they published it.
I apologize. I usually don't have this on. But anyway, keep going. They are, how can I say it? Because you hear like, and I know some of these shows are not really, let's use that word, scientific, you know, that they have like different names, you know, colloquial names, depending on the part of the country. And in some they're aggressive, and others they're not aggressive. And some they're, you know, they have a certain coloring. Of course, there's the Yeti, you know, that you hear about in the Himalayas. And they are different, but they all seem to have that same, how can I say, original profile of something that's quasi primate human. If that's the
Yeah,
best way I
well,
can
you've
think
got the
of.
reports of the dog man, you got reports of all kinds of crazy things goes on, but I get into this in my studies of quantum physics because there has to be an answer, and if you're going to get science behind this thing, I think the answer relies in quantum mechanics, which is a proven science, but it's how everything actually works throughout the universe. We're raised to think that only classical science, which is Newtonian physics, is all we grade everything on that.
Exactly.
And yet it's based on the fact that you have to see it, touch it, feel it. It's material,
Exactly.
physical,
It is.
measurable, predictable. That's not true with quantum science, and yet quantum science actually overrides it. That's how it was developed, actually, by Max Planck in the 1800s. He got the Nobel Prize for it in 1918 for quantum physics. That's where Einstein, Tesla, Bohr, Schrödinger, all these physicists of old, they were into that, and physicists nowadays are into it. But you get classical science, and that's what most of the researchers are using is just classical science, and they don't get into modern science, which is quantum physics. And I think they do a disservice to themselves by not looking into that. Really, it's how everything actually works. Nikola Tesla had a quote here: "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." I like that saying because it
Yes.
also, you got Edgar Casey, Professor Dr. Edgar Casey, who said it takes classical and quantum sciences together to have clear perception. Well, you put all that together, and why wouldn't you want to use quantum science to try to figure out the unusual phenomena that's going on? We only see within certain frequencies. You
Of
know,
course.
everything is energy, frequency, and vibration. And when you get into studying that, you realize that us, even at our most minute level of existence, we are energy. That energy
Mhm.
cannot die, according to Stephen Hawking, and according to physicists, according to quantum mechanics, energy doesn't die; it just changes form. So if you're religious, you might say, well, I'm going to go to heaven when I die. If you're a
Right.
physicist, you're going to say, well, I'm going to change it. I'm going to go into another dimension, some other form. Even
Sure.
Einstein wouldn't guess that as a spooky action.
Well, I mean, everybody nowadays, whether you want to call it science fiction, or whatever, people have heard parallel dimensions or parallel universes, or,
Mhm.
and get what you said about, and I had heard of this from other sources, that an uptick, let's say, in Bigfoot sightings correlate with an uptick in UFO sightings in certain areas that, let's say, that they're measuring. Do you think it's because there's interdimensional travels and one does and the other one comes through, or is that why you think that there's a correlation?
Yeah, I think there is. There are portals. NASA studies portals all the time. That's a fact. People say, "Oh, a portal is you." That's a problem. People go from, they think you're either science ape camp over here, they're just flesh and blood only, nothing else, or you're
Right.
woo, you're in the woo woo. Well, if
Yeah.
you're in the woo woo, you're in the same camp with Einstein and
Yeah.
Tesla, those guys, because they can go to church and believe in God, which is woo woo,
Right.
but they can't believe something else can happen outside of what they can see with their eyes, which is ridiculous if you think about it. We only hear within certain frequencies. We don't hear ultrasound or infrasound. We only hear our sound frequency, which is between
Hmm.
20 to 20,000 hertz. And yet you got ultrasound and infrasound, which dogs hear.
Right.
Ultrasound, infrasound is something elephants, big animals communicate with, but we don't hear it. We feel it, but we don't hear it. So there's a lot going on we don't see or hear. There's only three dimensions that we live in, four if you want to count time in there. But there's 11 established by the mathematics of quantum science. And if you realize those other dimensions exist, you realize how aliens can exist. And I think our government acknowledges aliens now. They're acknowledging
Well, yeah, they're
UFOs.
kind of like trying, like they're dragging their heels on it, but yeah, kind of.
Yeah. Well, they're feeding us just a little bit of time, whatever they think we can take.
Sure. Yeah.
That's all.
I,
That's all
I
they'll give us.
I think they're underestimating us humans,
Well,
as in the general population. Like I said, everybody will probably kind of wig out a little bit,
they,
have a good couple of drinks, or maybe get drunk, and then say, "Okay, let's hear it."
they don't want to have everybody rewriting history books right now, I guess, because that's
Oh,
what's going to happen. Yeah.
you asked a good question. Why wouldn't they? I'm going to tell you. Usually, when you see so much resistance, there's egos involved. Egos.
Ego is our human fault
Yes,
sometimes. You
of
have to
course.
have it.
If we've proposed this for so long as the truth, the fact, the only one. Sometimes certain universities, academics, scientists, whoever they are, they have a hard time saying I was wrong, or I have to amend my prior findings, or no. A lot of people sometimes have a problem with that. That's when you have that resistance
You're
to
so
looking
right,
at
Ronnie.
alternative explanations.
Well, Max Planck, the winner of the Nobel Prize in 1918, said the science changes one funeral at a time.
There you go. See what he was
I
talking
like that
about.
saying
Yeah.
too, because it takes a fresh thinking to go into
Yes.
something different. And
Yes.
so many of these professors and academia has been trained within a discipline, and I understand them. I've been with them a lot. I spoke with them over different places, and I understand where they're at. They lose their tenure if they get outside their parameters of their scientific discipline, and they have to stay within that. Have to find things that are just certain ways, and that's where they're at. And if they get out of it, they will take a beating. And Dr. Curlin, who studied our sounds, he took a hit. Grover
Really,
Krantz,
when he did
when he came out and said, "Hey, there's something going on here," and Grover Krantz, who is professor of anthropology over at the University of Washington here, he passed away right here in the town I live in now, but he also took a hit, and I write about that in one of my books too. For going out on the limb and saying these things are they're out there, they're a remnant of the Gigantopithecus, which a lot of science want to lean that way because there's actual hard evidence of those things existing. That was an entity they think stood upright. They're not sure about that because they just found the remains of a lot of teeth and jawbone, part of a jawbone. So, but it was huge, and again, 10 to 12 foot tall if it stood upright, and they think maybe it did, but they don't know if it was sentient or not. These things are sentient. They are, I think, a type of a hybrid from possible alien intervention into a primate, and that will tell you what the nuclear DNA is. The mitochondrial DNA, which has been studied twice by two different physicists, not physicists,
geneticists.
Thank you very much.
Oh my God! I'm telling you, it's like my iPhone is deciding that it doesn't want to turn off the sound, and I'm gonna have to switch it off. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ron.
Mom, what are you telling Dad already?
I'm telling you, your kids. Yeah. I'm telling you, your kids grow up and you move away, and nobody gave them the memo on it. But what I was going to tell you, Ron, is that usually when you start talking about the genetics, I'm sure you've heard the flip side of the UFO or ET intervention, that there's people that say, hey, they've extracted DNA and basically from humans, like they're doing some type of hybrid type of ET human thing. And it makes you wonder, did they do something along the same lines with the Bigfoot creature? Did they take some type of primate and did do something along those lines?
Yeah, they manipulate the DNA of the genome, and that creates whatever they manipulated to. I think there's an experimental program going on with alien intervention. They experiment with the different species on this planet. That's what gives you all these reports now of a dogman, even not to even speak of the Bigfoot, that's been seen so much. But however, this has been going for eons, and it's just nothing really.
I don't
advanced
understand.
Advanced intelligence has been here. I've seen the evidence of it in Peru and Bolivia where I've been. And anyway,
the thing with the dog man, that's a whole that even scares me. That one scares me for some reason. That, like, the description of that you think again, that human quality, kind of that ability to be bipedal, and according to stories that you hear, a cunning that you don't see in a regular animal. How's that?
Yeah.
Well, if you believe,
I was going to say, if you believe my theory about alien intervention into different genomes of different species, they can manipulate whatever they want to in the DNA and make what they're trying to make until they get it right. And I think let me back up a little bit. The Earth, I think, is the jewel of this solar system. What
Okay.
other entity on this, if they're in this solar system, wouldn't want to be here?
Okay.
They do want to be here, and they've been coming here for eons. And I know this. And if that's been happening, and it has, what are they doing here? Why are they here? They're trying to acclimate their species to this atmosphere. They are able to move through consciousness. They are able to go out of our perception, which I think that's what Bigfoot does when they claim they disappear and claim trackways stop. And there's a science behind how that happens. I write about that in my Quantum Bigfoot book. So there's a lot to look into, and looking into it in just an hour, I'm talking to you about 50 years of doing this stuff and interviewing a ton of people that have told me different things. And you start putting the dots together. When you have so many people tell you they saw one disappear, and then credible people, not just some fly-by guy's been, stoned on something. You have
Right. No.
Credible people saying this stuff, and you got to give some kind of wonderment to it. Are they all nuts? Are they all lying? Are they all delusional? Or did they really see something? And in that, when I told you that tube of light that went by me and this person.
That right there.
If you look at, David Paulides, who wrote the Missing 401 series of books, and he's produced some films now.
Yes.
I took him up there in 2018 to show him the camp and let him interview me. He's the first one and only one I've ever allowed to, everyone I've ever taken in there to do something like this. And they did a real good reproduction of that. So you'd see exactly what we was witnessing that night, pretty much exactly anyway, this tube of light going by us. And it's a little concerning. You don't know, again, what it's going to do or what it's all about. I think it's just energy, because when they do change out of their form, if mass can turn into energy only. Again, we're all energy. Everything's energy at its most minute level. So if you can convert the mass into just energy, through frequency, and I think that's how it's done. I think that's how the megalithic structures in Peru and Bolivia were done, through energy, frequency, vibration. Everything is that. So that's how I think a lot of the mysteries are solved, is through looking into quantum science. So
right. The other day I was talking to somebody about, that thing about, people, abductees saying, recovered memories about that they've taken, genetic material from them besides all the probe. And I was saying, well, you know what? Because exactly like what you said, well, why would they? I mean, if you would think these beings have obviously they're more advanced technologically. And I was thinking, yeah, but you know what? Maybe at this point in time, our genetic material is very good, because basically we've survived thousands upon thousands of years of different diseases. And we've overcome them. In other words, we're hardier. Maybe our genetic material is very sought after because of that.
Well, and we're evolving still. We're not.
Of course.
We're not. Well, we're not what we're going to be if we keep evolving. And you only evolve through vibrational frequency. If you can raise your personal vibrational frequency high enough, I think that's how you evolve. There's a way to do that too. So.
Well, let me ask you: do you think that? And I'm thinking, because, you hear from the beginning of the, how there were plagues and different types of sicknesses and, swaths of the population that were decimated throughout the years. And, I'm thinking maybe they're technologically more advanced, but maybe when it comes to reproduction, I guess is the best thing I can think of, or genetic material, they're deficient. And maybe that's why we're attractive. When I say us, I mean humans, as in besides the planet itself. And of course, I'm sure you've heard, other reports of actual, the most famous or the most well-known are the cattle mutilations, but, experimentation like what you said with animals, maybe it's overall all of the living things.
Yeah, you're talking about Skinwalker Ranch, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
There's been a lot of money, government, our tax money, been spent on that project there.
Yeah, I know that they
Yeah. So there's things that we just don't know yet. We are learning, but again, we have to learn how to learn, I guess is a good way to put it. But anyway, we're doing it. I think we're getting there. It's just a long process. I don't think they're allowed to interfere with our decision making, because I think that's what it's all about, is experiencing here things on this earth, us experiencing things. How we react to those experiences is what's what raises our personal vibrational frequency. But I think that's where ghosts are seen too. They're caught
Okay.
between in the fourth dimension of time, and they haven't raised their vibrational frequency enough to get into the fifth dimension. Or maybe they have chose not to go there because
Right.
they want to respond better than what they did before. So maybe they'll go to a re-embodiment, which is reincarnation. If
Mm-hmm.
a lot of some religions don't go for that, but most of the world religions do
Right.
believe in multiple embodiments. And if that's the case, you're here to respond to things, and how you respond to them is so important. So wonder why I was involved in this Bigfoot thing. I don't know for sure, unless it's so I could talk to you tonight.
Well, this when do you think that one of the theories I've heard about why sometimes Bigfoot is difficult is that they're masters of camouflage. In other
Yeah,
words, sometimes they're there, we just don't see them.
they could be. Yeah, I don't think they're all the same, and some of them I think have also crossbred with the indigenous people and become more diluted, more human-like than
Mhm.
others. I think
Right.
some of them are very probably perfectionists at camouflage. Yeah, they could get by a tree and you would think it's part of the tree. Had a lot of
Right.
reports of people seeing a tree and all of a sudden it gets up and walks away.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, they are certainly, some of them are that way. But I'm not sure what we were dealing with up there was that way, because what we were dealing with, there was sentient entities, and I do think there's very something special about some of them, like the ones we were dealing with, and there's other ones that are just like a big ape that's maybe a relic hominid that's evolved through the ages and learned how to camouflage very well, and crossbred too, which means they would have to have 23 pairs of chromosomes like
Do
we
you
do.
think they're aggressive again? And I know this is,
It
as I've
depends.
heard both reports. Some are aggressive towards humans, and there's others that basically want to stay out of our way, maybe observe us at most.
Sure. Well, again, it depends on the agenda of what's there. They're not all the same. I got to keep going with that, but I'm trying to tell you one mystery when we haven't even solved the first one yet.
Right. And I know
You
everybody
got,
tries to like put it under the same umbrella so they could explain, let's say if they want to do the Bigfoot,
yeah,
like, yeah, this is all there is, and it's
it's like there's
not one
another
size fit
species.
all.
Exactly. There's a species out there that's just going to all be the same, and that's just not the way it is. I don't think.
Do you
Yeah.
maybe we'll get, we'll have a what they call a bingo night, we'll get actual ET UFO disclosure along with Bigfoot disclosure at the same time.
Well, we're
Maybe.
getting a little bit at a time. I think we're going to be inundated with aliens pretty soon. I mean, we're going to see them more. We're not seeing them now because they stay out of our way. We, as human beings, have been given the dominion on this planet. It's our planet to screw up, and believe me, we're screwing it up. Well, there's wars going on, and
Right.
we're killing each other, we're hurting each other, and all that stuff. And we really got to stop that if we're ever going to get ahead as a human race. And yet these beings are out there just not wanting us to do that. A lot of them, I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, like I said, that free will kind of thing.
We all have free will. They have free will too, but I think again, they're not supposed to interfere with our karma, what we're supposed to respond to.
Sure. Even if they're going, oh, what are they doing? What?
Yeah. Well, the Roswell incident, which has now been acknowledged as really did happen, it wasn't a weather balloon. That happened after we set off the atomic bomb, World War II. And that was concerning, I think, to the aliens. And I think they're concerned now because of the potential wars that we got going on over.
Right. And it's like, yeah, and of course the weaponry is much more sophisticated now than it was back then.
Yeah.
And the loss of life would be extensive. And in the background we've got these other things going on. And I think sometimes how you said people sometimes are resistant to accepting the existence of, let's say, something like the Bigfoot creature. I think also we have this thing that we're the kings of the mountains, when it comes to nature.
Absolutely.
And it's like, what do you mean? There's something else out there like us, and it kind of like makes us worry. Like, what do you mean? We're not the pinnacle of everything creation.
That's what people think. I mean, well, who was it? Let me back my little. I got a little something here I'd like to read you. It was Galileo. He was put on house arrest for claiming that the Earth circled around the sun.
Yeah.
He was put on house arrest for the rest of his life because he claimed
Oh,
that.
I didn't know if it was for the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's what I read, and that's what I wrote down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just poor man. You know, he claimed something that was truth, but no one wanted to buy that. It's called cognitive dissonance. And when
Yes.
you have that, so many people have that even today. They can't accept new information when it goes against what their brain has been taught. And we're just creatures of what we've been taught. Our brain can only take what it's been taught.
Right.
And if something strange comes into it, the brain wants to fill it with whatever it knows, unless you're ready to open your mind up and accept what you're seeing then.
Wow.
And that's called,
In that case, we're very primitive. We're driven by pleasure
we
and
are.
pain. And to us, pain is the unknown or the, do I really want to open that door? No. Now there's a lot of knowledge to be gained, but no. Yeah, we're kind of very primitive when it comes to that. As far as our minds,
Yeah. Oh, we got a ways to go.
Oh,
We
of course,
do.
but we've
I
come a
mean,
long way, though. I don't want
and
to.
you know the masters of old, all the Jesus Christ, Buddha, these people that taught love and compassion, they said that's the key to everything. And I don't know about you, but if I could learn how to turn water into wine, I could make a lot of money.
You better believe it.
And I haven't learned how to walk on water yet. However, we're supposed to be able to do a lot of things we're not doing.
No, I know.
So we got a ways to go, and I think it's how we connect our heart, brain, and pineal gland together.
Of course.
Our heart, brain has to have a coherence, and you have to connect all this with the third eye, which has been calcified by our diets and by fluoride,
Exactly.
by what we
The
do
fluoride
to it.
and everything, exactly.
Yeah, but that's our receptor inside our head. That's how we communicate with the consciousness, the universal consciousness that everything is. And we're separated from that. And once you can connect with it and let it feed your outside brain, because when you get that gut feeling inside of you that something should be a certain way, and that your brain will talk you out of it.
Oh yeah.
But
It's
you
your
should go by
imagination, that inner chatter.
Yeah,
You're
well,
being
people,
foolish.
yeah.
Yeah. I tell people, sometimes we know when we dodged the bullet. We do, something tells you don't do this, don't do that, and you find out, wow. But sometimes, for example, let's say you, for some reason, you don't go down a certain route. This is to work that you normally do. For some reason, you follow your gut, and maybe you avoided this huge accident, but there's no way for you to ever know that because you alter your path, you bypass that accident, or it never occurred to begin with because you were not present.
Well, we have to go through linear time. That's what we're doing day by day.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of use the analogy of a book. If you're out in your other dimension after you passed on, and you're just looking at what's going on, you can look at any page you want to in this world of how many years it's been here and see what's gone on. But we have to go through linear time. When you get into quantum physics, time as we perceive it doesn't exist. And that's hard to get your head around. So it's hard for people to, and they don't even want to delve into quantum physics because it's really not an easy thing to get your head around, but you can conceive what it means and how it works. And that's what I've done. I've just been dealing with this now for several years, and I'm kind of cemented in the fact that, and I say fact, it is a fact. It is a science. I think that is how you get to the bottom of the mysteries behind Bigfoot. Is how do they disappear if they disappear? How do trackways stop? Now I used to throw people out with baby water when I heard them say that too, like a lot of researchers will. Well, the helicopter come down and pick them up. How'd the trackway just stop? Until it happened to me, and then it happened. My daughter saw one. Found its trackway. It was really deep. Something very heavy bipedal made this thing. I didn't see it, but she did, and started following the trackway, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And I looked up in the trees, could have jumped in a tree. I looked over boulders.
Like, where'd it go?
Where'd it go? Well, it all goes into matter, which we're all made of matter, but at the most minute form, we are energy, which is going to just, like I say, change forms. If they've learned how to change their matter into energy only, they wouldn't have the density to make a track.
Yes.
And if you watch that 411 film, The Hunted, missing 411.
Yes, I've seen it. Yeah. I've seen it.
Well, the rod going by is our camp, and I'm in that for about 15 minutes, I guess. The interview he did with me was videographer and all. But the series the episode right after that, for about 15 minutes, was the best person who claimed they'd seen a pixel. She was bow hunting up in a tree, and she's seen this pixelated form going from one tree to another tree. And that kind of frightened her. At the same time, though, they found out that a bunch of kids down at the, a bunch of people actually down at the high school was watching a UFO. Now, there's a connection there going on, we think, and it's just fun delving into this stuff. I've been doing it for so many years now, and I'm really enjoying it. But you see that, and then you hear the reports of pickerization form. I've heard too many reports like that now to just discard. There has to be a science behind it, and the science is quantum physics, in my opinion.
Yeah, of course. But no, and it's true. You know, they can alter the rate that they vibrate. I mean, they could, and it's maybe something they do just as easily as breathing. You know, to us, we don't get it, but to them, maybe it's just like, you know, I'll just like do this and I can do that. And they slip into, you know, maybe a little pocket out of our dimension, and that's it.
I suggest maybe they have a vocal cords that's so much superior to ours, because the sounds we had, humans can't do them. Perhaps they can make the frequency and get the vibration going to just what we're talking about right now, to change their matter into energy and then back again. How they do that it's only speculation, but they might be doing it through the vocal mechanism.
Did you, when you went, because I know that you mentioned here that you had gone to look for the Yeti. Are there familiar stories as far as, I imagine the people there that live there, it sounds like they believe it as far
they do. In 2014, a National Geographic sponsored team went up there with the geneticists. And at 17,000 feet above Bhutan in the Himalayas, they found eDNA, which is environmental eDNA. And she came back and studied it and found that the mitochondrial, which is the maternal side, was 99% human. Well, that's pretty phenomenal, and that matches Melba Ketchum's findings that she got downed by the scientific community because they said it had to be contaminated because nothing, it's not human. You know, whatever they are, science isn't supposed to do that. They're supposed to have an open. They're supposed to be trying to discover stuff and not down other people just because they found something they couldn't find. But anyway, she said they were very much on the maternal side human, but she also went into the nuclear DNA, which is the male counterpart, which would determine who the male was. And out of 227 billion samples, they couldn't be matched to anything. So she went into the ancient texts of the Nephilim and the biblical accounts of aliens interbreeding with the genome of humans and creating giants. And that, of course, the sample she had was from supposedly Bigfoots. And she had, I think, 108 samples, over 100 samples that she tested. And she swears by everything she's got that they were not contaminated. So she's being vindicated, I think. And as soon as science allows it, now science mostly is funded by our government dollars, you know. And they want the narrative that they're going to pay for. So a lot of times science won't touch this field just because, they'll lose their funding. And
and I know, and it always comes down to
money. But even the giants, I've been in the Lovelock Caves in Nevada. That was one reason I went to South America, to see if there was a crumb trail of Bigfoot up here. And there is. You know, you find stories of the Mayans the Incas being warring with the Aztecs and the Mayans, and you find Mayan stories saying they warred with giants in the north, and you go up in the north and up where we are, the Nevada, the Lovelock Caves, and you find the Paiutes with a story that they were warring with cannibalistic giants, red-haired giants. And that's what the caves were all about. They supposedly went together and drove them into the cave and then burned them out. And I've been there 4 times, but you can't find the remains anymore. Supposedly in 1918, I think it was, when the Batquana miners went in there and found these remains, they were taken out and they were displayed for a long time. But then the Smithsonian has taken them away, and Repatriate Act, they call it, and you can't see those things anymore.
Really? They won't allow it?
No, they don't allow it. They don't have them in the museums there anymore. They used to have. However, I got a picture of one before they ever took them away. I got a picture of one. I didn't take the picture.
Right. But yes,
an old friend of mine gave me the picture of one. Yeah.
Isn't that
so? There's a lot going on. I think our government hides a lot from us. I think everybody kind of agrees with that. You know, they're as much as we pay them.
Do you think that more? I don't want to say. What's the best word I'm thinking of? More that sometimes private companies, they do their own research. You know, usually you would think of universities being the ones that would do this type of research And of course, you always thought that they wanted to be the ones to make a significant discovery.
I've heard that, yes, that the private companies do.
But private companies, I think, now are the ones that are doing that. Whether they let it out of the bag, that's a whole different story. But
right. Yeah, I think private companies do. They put a lot of money into, what Tesla discovered, some of his, the inventions that's been done. They don't want some of that stuff out because it'll destroy our economy. If we all had free energy, what would that do?
oh wow, yeah, that boy.
But that stuff could be coming. The way the Earth is right now with the economy, the way it's going, and
yes,
everything like that. It's just.
There was I don't know if you've ever saw it. This movie I think is about maybe 10 or 12 years old, something like that. It's called Chain Reaction. It's one of those action movies, Keanu Reeves. But the whole premise of the movie was that they made a discovery of free energy, and the inventor wanted to release it to the world, the people of the world. And of course, the whole movie, the premise of the movie is, the inventor got killed, and everybody that on his team, they were trying to run away because exactly what you said, that they couldn't do that. They couldn't release free energy to be used by everyone.
There's so much technology available that is actually known by private companies, which is all underground pretty much. Sure. It's all known, but again, they can't release it. They give us a little bit at a time. I think just what they think we can handle that we'll accept, and that's where it's going, I think, and that's why I think we're gonna see more and more about UFOs and aliens before long.
But at the same time, now let me ask you, and I have my own theory on this. I'm sure you're familiar with, back in the 50s, we had the flying saucers, and, back into the 90s, we had the X-Files, which it makes it sound like the government and the ETs have this relationship. What do you think? Is that actually accurate, or do we know a lot less than people think that we know about extraterrestrials?
I think we're going to learn a lot more. We're being inundated a little bit at a time, like I said, with information. A lot of it's through programming, through what you're seeing on these Star Wars and things like that.
Right. Like
there's all kinds of people say, well, how could a Yeti live in such cold weather? Well, how do they know what it can do? How do you know what?
Sure.
Some of the species might live underwater in some other planet or something. Who knows?
Yeah, it's acclimated.
And they could be intelligent like the octopus is now. A lot of people think the octopus might be actually from aliens, really, because it's so smart.
Yeah, it's very intelligent.
The way they camouflage, I've seen this underwater myself. These things just changing, like the squid does. I've swam with those things too. Those are spooky.
Do you think that all of the technological advances that we made, do you think is that we're smarter? We back engineered some?
Oh, I think we do back engineer. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. So there's another question. Is some of the saucers we're seeing just back engineered? Because you got the Germans during World War II were doing a lot of stuff with all the science that was over there came over here.
Yes.
After the war. And so we got the cream of the crop there, and I think we're back engineering a lot of stuff.
Okay.
For sure, I have no doubt about that, really. And
sometimes it makes me wonder, maybe we were smart, but maybe we really. Because I'm thinking, how you have to be really careful. I imagine when you're back engineering technology that you really don't understand, as in, what if you do something you shouldn't, or tamper with something you shouldn't? That's sure. I guess is my concern. Like, how much have they back engineered?
I imagine a lot of people have lost their life trying to do stuff that.
Yeah, we never hear about that, right?
Yeah. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
No.
What you hear would be different than what happened, probably.
Well, yeah, you know what, and I've heard, especially if in the military, sometimes things happen to certain personnel, and the families they complain later on that they never get a straight story about what happened to, this person. Right. They get a very generic explanation. And I'm sure that sometimes that falls into that case as far as maybe what they were involved in. Do you think that, you hear also, in this area whether you want to call it ufology and the Bigfoot and even the physics that's involved in it, the technology, where I've heard of people being told, how's that? Men in Black. Do you believe them about the Men in Black? And I know that's used sometimes to, say that the government comes and tells you, stop looking into that.
Yeah, I do. There's a whole, yes, they're still out there too.
Right.
They're not
I know. Everybody
just,
thinks of it like the the guy with a suit and the black tie, but yeah.
They're not all dressed in black though.
Right. No, I know, but that prototypical,
they'll
that
impersonate
everybody
things
thinks
just
so.
to try to get information, because really they're after information. A lot of them are, but I'm sure I feel pretty confident that's going on today even.
No.
I have not been circled with black helicopters or men in black.
No, yeah, I know, but I've heard of people from very credible sources that they're like
they interrogate,
or they eavesdrop, or they, in other words, it's how you get attention when you're over the target. Otherwise, nobody would pay attention to you. That kind of thing.
All of the above. Yeah. This is fun.
Well,
it's fun talking about this stuff.
Of course, and I think that with the advent of the internet, I think that's why it's become. It's almost like the internet has opened the door for communication everywhere at the same time, and sharing experiences and ideas. And it's like, that's really hard to keep a lid on that, as far as when you've got people one way or another communicating about theories or reports, eyewitness reports. It wasn't like back in the 50s where, what was it, after Roswell, they published, it was a weather balloon, and people were like, well, okay. I was like, what were you going to do?
Yeah.
Now it's like, nah, no, this is the real story. And this is, and like, the other day I was thinking, man, I hope in my lifetime I see ET disclosure. And I'm thinking, no, I don't have to worry about that.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. I'm 79 years old now, and I want to see it in my lifetime. That would be so good to know. Just if I'm right or wrong. Now, I haven't been surrounded by guys in black yet.
Well, no, I know everybody tells me.
But up here, close to where I live, is where the Maury Island incident happened, and there's been a film made on that where a UFO, several of them were seen here outside of Seattle over the Maury Island. And one of them started dropping debris out of its UFO, and it fell on this boat that was down there, killing the guy's dog and breaking his son's arm.
Wow.
And some of it dropped on the island, the South Maury Island, and there's a film about that. These guys I know made it, and I speak with them every once in a while, but it's interesting because that was just before Roswell happened. and it's all kind of, you don't hear about that, but yet it happened, and it's publicized. It's a fact. It's not like it's woo-woo or something like that. But to me, changing into paranormal, supernatural, and all that, the nomenclature, how you pronounce talk about those stuff, is just synonymous with quantum science. So, and you have to excuse me if I'm a little rum-dum. I'm still on jet lag. I just got out of a convention back east, and prior to that, I was on an expedition in Alaska doing some stuff.
Wow.
Remote area up there. And
All
I'm
right.
a little bit,
you're like.
Well, I'm still moving around. I'm still vertical, but it's a fun life. I got to tell you, it's been great doing this stuff.
Well, because I imagine now it's summer there kind of summer up in Alaska, right? Well, it's going into summer.
It's better. It's not about frozen one night up there. Besides that,
back in the 80s, one time I remember in June, at the first week of June, I went up to Yellowstone, and they had snowbanks and I couldn't believe it. And you could tell they had just opened the roads up into Yellowstone, because before you couldn't go in there because of the snow, and it was June. And I was like, I can't believe this.
Oh, well, I used to live in Mariposa down by Yosemite, and you could get snow in June every once in a while.
Yeah.
Just amazing. I mean, it melts right away because it is summer, but that's unusual. But yeah, it can. But Alaska, because of the daylight time, June 21st up there is the longest day of the year, and they have this all-night football games up in the Fairbanks. The sun don't go down; it just goes over here, touches the bank, goes over there, touches the bank, goes right back and forth.
That's like
and I used to live up there as a boy in Alaska. It's quite It is quite the wilderness, and I was been flying around in a helicopter up there this last trip, and it was it's
Is
really
there
the
any
last
truth?
wilderness.
I've heard since sounds you're very very familiar with Alaska that I've heard about the Alaska Triangle that
Yeah,
there's is there accuracy to those reports that there's a grouping of things that always happen in that between those 3 points?
there's a lot of sightings, a lot of unusual phenomena happen in those. Yes, the Alaska Triangle. Yeah, and that's where I
Right.
was part of it, researching something up there. And that I can't talk about it under a disclosure thing, but it should be in a film out probably first next year.
Really?
I hope so. I mean, you never know about production companies how they're gonna
Yeah, I
what they're
know.
gonna do to you. If it doesn't fit their narrative, they don't do it. But
What is what is the film about? Is it about that subject
well, that's what they
specifically?
don't want me to talk about is what they
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yeah,
All right, Marlene. Asking
I asked
about
them how
what you
much I
said,
could
yes.
reveal of this, and they said, "Well, we want to surprise everybody." So,
Okay.
but yeah, there's some very interesting stuff going to come out of that. I think
I think
a
that's
lot of mysteries up there.
yes, yes, and God knows when you look at the things, the wilderness out there, I imagine there's places what nobody's ever been in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Or I was filming a lot of this stuff going over in the helicopter, and just I had forgotten just how, because I'm a pilot too. I had my own plane. I've flown around Alaska quite a bit myself, and it's just a vast country. It's like you go into like Buenos Aires or one of those places like that. As far as
Hmm.
you can see, as high as you can get in one of those buildings, as far as you can see, there's nothing but buildings. And
Yeah.
Alaska's like that, except as far as you can see, it's nothing but mountains. Mountains.
Wow.
You fly at 200 miles an hour, and you're mountains, mountains,
Let me tell you
mountains,
something, though.
mountains.
Crazy stuff happens to people flying though around in Alaska. I mean, it's like
Yeah, there's a lot of missing people up there.
yeah.
A lot of missing people out of Alaska.
Well, I'm going to tell
Yeah.
my own little Bigfoot story. This happened, it was in Northern California. This is the husband of a friend of mine that they still live out in, as a matter of fact, in Merced. And he says that when he was a kid, he went camping with his uncle and his dad. And they sent him down to like, I guess, I don't know if it was like a creek or a little lake side to bring in some water. And he says that he was about to, like, he had just come out of, I guess, the tree line. And he said that all of a sudden he hears like the crack of a brush. So he says he stopped and he says, out of the woods walked a Bigfoot, came down to drink water and he says he just stood there like, he says he didn't move, not because he wasn't, it's just he was so scared. He couldn't move. He was like,
Uh-huh.
and he says that it drank water and then just walked back into the forest. He says he came back to where his uncle and his dad were at, and they just looked at him and they were like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And he's like, and of course they rushed. They couldn't find anything. And he says and this gentleman, he's very trustworthy. No reason. He goes, Marlene, I've never forgotten that. He goes, but later on, I don't think I went back camping until I was older, and even then, nothing happened. He wasn't aggressive. I don't think he even saw me, to be honest with you. But I would never go without some type of firearm with me after I saw that.
I
And
I believe in taking firearms, and not for Bigfoot, but for those other things out there that can bother you. I got a 52-inch hat. I got a hat band made out of a 52-inch rattlesnake, 9.5 rattlers on it, which we shot on the trail up there.
that's huge.
So there's other things that can bother you. I usually put a little bird shot in the first 2 rounds of my pistol, and that's for a bear, or maybe you want to have a grouse for dinner or something like that. But there's other things that can happen besides Bigfoot, and I think Bigfoot.
I like how you put that. Something could bother you. Okay.
Well, humans are probably the most dangerous thing in the woods.
I know, and you know what? It's really funny, and I'm gonna this thing that sometimes I've heard of people going into the woods for different reasons, and there's people out in the woods living there that are kind of very unusual. That you have to be really careful. Also, it's not only the animals; it's like what you pointed out.
Right.
Sometimes you run into humans out there that are dangerous, for lack of a better word. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I used to fly for the Sheriff's Aero Squadron too, for sighting pot gardens when they were illegal. And we used to sit on a bulletproof vest because in case you get shot at, you know,
sure.
you don't want 2 of something, you only got 1 of. And,
yeah, there's a lot of things that happens in those woods. So anyway, Ron, thank you so much. You have been wonderful to speak to. I wish you would come back, especially I'm going to keep an eye out. You said for whatever happens, if it happens next year. But for my podcast listeners, what website could they go to? I'm going to have a link to in the credits of the show. But for the podcast listeners, where can they go to get more information?
Ron Morehead. That's spelled 10 Morehead. RonMorehead.com.
Okay.
And that's my website. And my Facebook page is ronaldj.morehead. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's my Facebook page. I'm easy to get a hold of. I mean, I try to respond to everybody sooner or later. Sometimes when I get busy like this, like I've been for the last few weeks, I got to go. Well, I got to go somewhere else in another week or two down to California.
I bet. Yeah.
But I really try to respond as much as I can and to everybody. So I'm easy to find. I'm easy approachable, and it's not a big deal. I just happen to be in the right place doing something and had this happen to me. So
I know, but you know
just
what?
a person. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I tell everybody. You know, all these stories, whether it's ET or Bigfoot, and you say, okay, let's take out the people that are lying. Let's take out the people that thought they saw something, but they really saw something else. That still leaves so many people with similar stories that there has to be truth for it. And I want to say I interviewed about 3 years ago a gentleman called Jim Smith. He passed away already, and he ran the Alabama Bigfoot Society out of Alabama, and he'd had it up since the 1970s. And he told me, Marlene, you know, he says sometimes people would have sightings, especially if they're going down the road, of Bigfoot things, and they would call the police because they didn't know what else to do. So he says sometimes these police would take these people over to his house because what else? What are they going to tell? You know, what can they do? And he told me, he goes, I don't know what they saw, but you could tell these people were telling the truth. They saw something, and he says that happened several times throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
That they legitimately, it wasn't, he says these are not people joking or playing a hoax or people that had too much to drink or out trying to see. He says the majority of them were not looking to see or look for Bigfoot. They had a sighting.
I've had deputies come to me about this. Not someone told them, but they've actually followed these things, followed the tracks in the snow.
Right.
I've had highway patrolmen who've seen them, but they won't come out and tell it to the public.
That's a career killer right there.
Yeah, I know a guy right here personally that he had to quit. He quit the deputy. He was a deputy for 15 years. But he had one run across in front of his patrol car, and he can't report it. He get laughed at. He can't. So anyway, there's a big stigma with this stuff. If you start acknowledging it as a professional, you're going to get banned with it.
You'll always be known as that guy.
Yeah. But me, I don't care.
Right, I know.
I just say what I think, and there you are. I don't care. No one's going to. They get me. I've had a good life. What the hell?
Like, all right, okay. You don't blame me to us. Who cares? Next. It was great. It was wonderful to speak to you, Ron.
And if you do play those sounds that I sent you.
Yes. Well, no, I meant to mention I've been checking all this time. I've been checking my email. I have not gotten them, which for all of you, Ron was going to send me some recordings over and I was going to play them. And I'm going to amend the end of the episode and include them. Because one way or another, I'm sure he's going to get them to me. I'll
shoot them to you again, Marlene.
Yes, if you could. And I will, play them and I'll amend them to between now and, at the end of the show so people can hear them.
Uh-huh. Well, I sent you the very aggressive ones that we started with.
Great.
They're called Disagreement, I think, or something like that. And I got one called Rapid Fire, which is a male and a female, they think, arguing with each other. And then I got one that was made a couple of years later where I was actually interacting with it, where they were yelling at me, asking me something. I don't know what it was, but I was trying to respond to them in a mimicking fashion. We're underestimating what we're dealing with then. I think totally underestimating them. We thought.
And you're thinking, I hope I'm saying the right thing here.
They think, well, I was trying to say what they were saying.
Yeah, right.
They think that we think we're smarter than them, and that's just not the way it goes.
Uh-huh.
They are more intuitive than you can even imagine.
That's the human part of them thinking we're smarter.
But I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Contrary. It has been my pleasure. It's been great.
We will talk again sometime.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye,
You
Ron.
too. Take care.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, wow. I apologize, everybody, for everybody, all my children deciding, my adult children, by the way, deciding that they must talk to me right away. And for some reason, my iPhone turn off sound thing is not working. You know, it's one of those things that, such as life. But anyway, when you hear from, you know, you speak to so many people, and I've spoken to so many people like that. Jim Smith, he passed away like in 2019, and I interviewed him like in 2017. He had been involved with Bigfoot and stories and everything since the 1970s. And he told me the stories, and he says, Marlene, people would come, the police bring him. He says, and I had a couple that even told me, sir, can we stay here? Because we don't want to leave until it's daylight. And you would think, and he says these were adults, because and he says they were truthfully scared. They saw something, and he says, and you don't know how many throughout the years, besides stories of people like that would tell me these things, of encounters they had, of sightings, of things running across the road while they were traveling down the road, and they just didn't know how to handle it. And of course, that's why I'm saying some of them, like, what else do? You call the police, and what is the police going to do? Yes, you had a Bigfoot sighting, sir, but that's not against the law. But you know, okay, well, you know what? We can go visit this gentleman who he might be help make you feel better, because he's going to tell you that you're not the only one that's seen this. And this is what I'm saying. Jim Smith, he was, he told me stories, and really his experience was based on that. He lived in that same area of Alabama, I want to say, the majority of his life. You know, and and it's almost like, I want to say, you know, you hear about Jane Goodall, that she spent all these years observing the chimps because she went to, well, this Jim had this X amount of years of observation and hearing stories and anecdotes and everything for X amount of years. And a lot of what he described is very similar to what Ron was talking about. Okay, same thing. You know, what people are describing, the same thing, encounters that hunters have, people that are out there, you know, how can I say, maybe now in recent times it's become more popular for people to go out there trying to find Bigfoot. But back then, through the 70s and 80s, yeah, people had heard of the Bigfoot sighting, but it wasn't like it is now. You know, a lot of people that would go camping or hunting, they weren't looking to have an encounter with Bigfoot. And nonetheless, things did happen through all those years. And it's that theory that he talked about, you know, was or is Bigfoot a product of genetic tweaking with extraterrestrials with our genetic material? Sure, why not? I don't think that's far-fetched at all. I've spoken on other shows with other people, same thing, about the, you know, that there's how can I say, for people that are able to track reports of UFO sightings and cryptid and or Bigfoot sightings, that they find a correlation of higher numbers of sightings coincidentally at the same time or in that same area. That happens all the time. You know, as more and more people now that, especially people that have been in there in the field and they received reports, and they can look back and look at and say, well, you know what, from this time period to this time period, this is what came in. Isn't it weird? We had all these sightings of lights in the sky or whatever. And at the same time, we had this huge increase of ET sighting. I mean, not ET sightings, Bigfoot sightings or cryptid sightings. It could be a lot of different things, or anomalies. Like he was saying, you know, lights, weird lights, things that because sometimes people think of UFO sighting as strictly like, I saw a spaceship, you know. No, sometimes it's strange lighting that you can't account for. What he was describing, here you are in a remote place, and somehow you're seeing lights or hearing noises that don't make sense, why they would be there, because you're out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's not like one of those things, well, sound travels. You'll have people say, well, sound is really weird, it'll travel. No, it doesn't travel that far. Not if you're in the middle of nowhere. Are you going to be hearing something that belongs in, what's the thing I'm thinking of? In the civilized world, or in an urban setting, or even in a rural, nobody's going to be out there. Especially if you have to hike to go. It just doesn't make sense. Those things are, are we talking time slips? What are we talking about here? Are there portals that are open? And I spoke about this the last time on purpose, or are they just rips that mend themselves back up? But every once in a while they open up, and maybe that's when and how Bigfoot or other cryptids come and go. Or do they have that ability to change their vibrational frequency to be able to just, like he said, disappear? Which, by the way, I mean, just about every person that I've heard, that's talked about the thing with either Bigfoot or other cryptids, I've heard that before. They, for lack of a better word, disappear, in the sense of, I'm following something and then it's gone. Even if it's not the tracks, it's like they just fade, like they dissolve. Now, and I wish I had gotten asked Ron about that, but I took into consideration also that he had jet lag and everything. But when he talked about David Paulides and his missing 411, about people disappearing, reappearing, sometimes alive, sometimes dead, sometimes months later, sometimes with their clothing on backwards, shoes missing, or even people and children showing up in places that it's physically impossible for them to have been put there. All right. Are we talking again some type of people falling into interdimensional, I don't know, rips? And the only problem I have with that theory, and I'll tell you why, in the sense of, is there something intentional behind it? If you listen to David Paulides, he's crunched the numbers, and he says there's certain things that show up in all these people that disappear. He's described where some of them have some type of learning disability. He's even narrowed it down sometimes to genetic backgrounds. I mean, a bunch of stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if this was something that, talk about being at the wrong place at the wrong time, you fall into a portal, a rip, something, and that's it. All of a sudden you were there and then you're gone. You would not have a correlation of saying, well, these types of people are the ones that usually leave or go or disappear. It would just be haphazard, wrong place, wrong time. You were standing there. Next thing you know, something opens up, and either you fall in, but there would be no profile, I guess, of who would be disappearing. And there is. So to me, that shows some type of, how can I say, picking people. There's a something that they're looking for. So that shows some type of intelligence. Again, that opens the door again to a lot of other things, as far as I've heard theories of Bigfoot taking people. Is that the purpose of Bigfoot? Do extraterrestrials use Bigfoot to pick up, instead of the prototypical abduction, being put, raised up into the spaceship? Are the Bigfoot the ones that the ET send out to fetch humans for them? Why not? I mean, I know people are going to say, wow, Marlene, that's way out there. Why not? Why not? And that also explains why people just disappear out of nowhere. And maybe their return, unfortunately, which, by the way, when you look at these disappearances. And considering that David Paulides, he says he's excluded a bunch of these disappearances based on, there's people with mental illnesses, a bunch of other things. In other words, he kind of like really screens out people disappearing for a lot of other reasons. When you look at it, that, a good portion of them are discovered dead, or sometimes afterwards their remains years or months. It's like, wow, you don't want to think that these extraterrestrials are abducting us and returning us in really bad shape. Because a lot of the, we always hear this thing about abductions, as in sometimes people, not everybody, but sometimes people describe the horrific experimentation. There's others that say that it's different, it's not as bad, or that they were more scared. But most of the time you end up coming back alive. And, and I know there's some that will say, I had a lifelong experience of abductions. And you even hear of families, a history of family members, as in generational. But most of the time, people come back alive. Maybe traumatized, but alive. But that would put a whole different spin on it if you found out that that we were being picked up, or maybe that going through one portal and coming back not everybody can handle it physically. Maybe it does something to us. It alters us in some way physically that we can't survive it. For any of you sci-fi buffs that have seen The Fly, when it goes from one to the other, but when it goes to the other, it doesn't, you don't get put back together the way you should be. Even though I'm sure those people have been autopsied, and I've never heard of that before. But I know that there's certain things that they have found when the Emmys do the examination on the bodies of people that have been, if there's anything to recover. Because remember, if somebody's been discovered years later and all there is skeletal remains, there's only so much a pathologist or can discover from the body if all you got is bones, and some at best. So I think it's so interesting. I'm going to be, if I haven't done it already, I will be uploading the calls that Ron was sending over to me. If I haven't inserted it yet, which I will have, and you'll be thinking, okay, Marlene, we get it. We already heard it. I'll find it. If it's either in between his appearance that he got signed off and me, or at the end, and he described exactly what they are. So let me tell you something. I'm looking forward to it. And again, guys, thank you so much for being part of my audience. You're all wonderful. And come back next week, because I have great guests coming on to talk about a lot of interesting things. So until next time, take care. Hi, everybody. This is Marlene. The following are two sets of recordings, Bigfoot recordings taken by Ron Morehead. The first one that you're going to hear, the title of it is Fast Talk. Here we go. Now, the second one that I'm going to play for you now, the title on it is Child's Play. I believe this is more than one conversing back and forth.
It's two of them.
And there you are. I'm not much of an outdoorsman or outdoors woman, but I know that if I heard that while I was in the woods, I'd be like, I wouldn't think it was a bear. I'll tell you that much. Again, thanks for being part of my audience. Take care.